JP, you talked briefly about some lines in the body.
Yeah.
Can you touch a little bit more on those and
Sure.
like what it actually means? And I know you've got a really high-tech model there.
All my stuff is really pretty simple when we get into it, but the chains of tissue in the body, a lot of people, and I'll turn to the camera so people can kind of see, a lot of people think that there's 622 muscles in the body and they all have a separate job.
Right.
But the stuff in the last 15 years or so, the dissections that they're doing, they're actually, instead of scraping away this white stuff that covers muscles, what they've been doing is going, is this significant? And what they've found is, geez, yeah, it is, because there's more of that than there is anything else in the body.
Amazing.
So this stuff, how is it significant? Well, it joins chains of muscles together, and effectively it's encased these muscles so it becomes one piece of elastic inside of which is several muscle groups. So rather than us think, okay, then we've got 622 separate muscles, really we've kind of got one muscle in 622 bags within a unitary bag.
Yeah.
Within that bag, there are some chains of muscles and connective tissue that form effectively pieces of elastic. So rather than 622 muscles, I view the body more in 16 elastic bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, if I was to just give you an example, there's one
just
called...
a little bit, just so we don't cut your feet off.
There is one called the lateral line, which goes from the base of the foot up the outside of the leg, joining at the hips, going crisscrossing through the rib cage, and then actually forming this elastic band. There's one on either side, and you can see how they would hold each other in balance.
Yeah.
In the same way that the superficial front line, which would go up the front of the body and go like this, there's a superficial back line as well. You can see how they would actually hold each other in balance. And there's a lot of these lines, and the push-pull effects of those hold our joints apart, which messed with my head when I was first kind of learning about this stuff. Until I was presented with a model like this. I'm just going to bring that like a model like this, which is a kid's toy. Yeah. And as you can see, each time I press that, it springs back open again. But none of the pieces of wood, i.e. the hard elements of this, none of the pieces of wood actually touch, but it holds a shape and a structure. So the room that we're in, the thing that holds the shape and structure is the hard stuff. It's the walls and the roof.
Right.
The hard stuff here doesn't give it its shape.
Okay.
It doesn't give it, effectively its structure or the reactivity that's in that model. What it is these elastic bands that are doing that.
Okay.
So the elastic bands are holding effectively these joints apart because they're in this beautiful tension against each other. So they call it tensional integrity or tensegrity.
Right.
So this is a tensegrity model. It's actually a child's toy, but it happens to also be a tensegrity model. What I love about this though is we can actually do a thing like we could tie a knot in one elastic band, and straight away, can you see how this joint here is much closer?
Shape of it. Yeah.
So number one, the joints are closer together, and I don't know if you've met people with their joints that are close together in their body. Normally, they're in pain.
Yeah.
So we want space in the joints. But number two, it's changed the shape of the whole thing, and it's also changed the way the whole thing then moves. And if I just concentrate on that one, this one really sticks out a lot further.
Right.
So if we took this as an organism, that's where pain would be during movement.
Okay.
But there's no problem there.
Right.
Every time that moves, it's just like overstretched pain. Here's the issue though.
Okay.
So everything is connected to everything else. So the idea that we have pain in one place, a movement pain in one place, and it not be related to something somewhere else in the body is just way oversimplified.
Yeah.
So what we need to go is go, yeah, sure, give that area that's in pain some love, but look at why it's in pain. Because I would say 95% of the people that I've seen over the last 8 years, I haven't found the problem that they exhibit with, i.e. pain, I haven't found that area is the source of their pain.
Okay, so you're saying, so when you grab the band there, just to really reiterate that, if you were to have a restriction in that part of the line, it would be pulling on the rest of the line, but then also pulling the rest of the body into a different shape. So when it moves differently.
It moves differently.
Yeah.
So the shape that we are and then every shape that we then, when we move, is different. So I talk a lot in terms of shapes, in fact, because I'm interested in the shapes people make when they move. So if they bend and reach, do they do this or do they do that?
Right.
Yeah. They're two very different shapes to do the same job and get my hands to the same point.
Right.
So what shapes do they make when they're doing that? If there are lots of limitations through here, well then they're much more likely to grab through there and get to there. Less, they're going to be taller through here, they're going to be able to do that a lot better, kind of thing. But, you know, I'll turn to the camera here and just go, okay then, what if we've got these lateral lines here, and then we tie a couple of knots at the hip? We do that, I've got a lot more strain here, so what's likely to happen? I'm likely to be pulled here.
Yeah.
Do I get pain over here though? Well, what's
More
being
than
overstretched?
likely, through here, yeah.
So maybe that side of the back or the hip, there's going to be hip pain or something, because this has been open up.
Yeah.
And then it's been opened up, and then you've got to move.
Yeah.
So not only is it overstretched, but then you're moving. But what are people doing? I need massages, I need heat packs,
Yeah.
I need help with my lower back on this side, and I'll be going, well actually, can we put you through some movements? And then go, wow, you're really limited through here. And then, well, I don't hurt there. Well no, there's even more reason to go there, because it's really limited and you're not hurting there. And there's this knock-on effect. Like that one would be a real plainly obvious one. But you go back to your hip carrying mums and there's kind of all of this going on. Well, again, look how this is, to get that going like that, how has this got to open up through here? I mean, that's uncomfortable for me just to get into that position.
It's uncomfortable.
Just, wow. So that's, oh man.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 young ones, as you know. So I've got a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And knowing this stuff right from the start, I carry them a lot. So they get carried here, or they get carried kind of there or there. And I alternate sides, but at no point do I do that. But the little girl across the road who's 8, she comes across and she picks up my little one, George, and she's like this. And she'll walk around with him like this. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's a really refreshing way to look at it, and I think it makes, like, when I learnt this from you, it just like light bulbs were going off in my mind, and it just makes more sense than the fact that I was, for instance, with the pain that I was feeling, going and getting massages and cracked with the chiropractor and things like that, but not actually having any relief, because really I was chasing that area of that I was feeling pain in to get relief, when I would have gotten relief with actually looking at what else was going on in my body.
Underlying things going
awesome.
on that were affecting
Thank
your
you
pain.
for that. And I'm sure that's really helped some of the mums listening and understanding their pain, because I think the more you understand about the pain you're feeling and why you're feeling it, that creates that releases a little bit of tension already, you know. And I think that was part of my healing journey, is to understand as much as I could about what was going on in my body, and I still am, but it really did make a big difference. So thank you. I'm going to get you back and we're going to play some games.
Great.
Cool.
Cheers.